Hey guys, Sticks here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a short little tutorial on how to optimize your OBS settings. These are the settings that you guys will want to stream, and I don't know what every setting does, but I'm going to go through all the settings that I know, there's a few settings that are very important. A lot of them you're just going to have to keep as default, but we'll get into that. I'll show you guys real quick. Okay, so first just go into the settings here. In the general settings, most of the stuff here you can pretty much just leave as default, whatever it has. I mean, this stuff doesn't really affect, this is more preferences for just using OBS rather than stuff that's actually going to affect your stream. So obviously the stuff in here, like, do you want snapping when you move your stuff around? Do you want, like, you can read through all these tick boxes. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory what they are. Do you want your stream to automatically start recording when you start stream? Stuff like that. Some nice preference stuff in here. You'll have to read through this yourself. I'm not going to go through all of these settings. But yeah, anyways, here we have where you'll select the service that you want to stream to. So here we have Twitch is what I stream to personally. And whatever streaming service you have, you're going to have to get your server key. So for the server to stream to, I've just picked Australia, Sydney, because it's the closest server to me. I've never had issues with the stream server, but just pick whatever's closest to you is probably the best way to do it. I think they always work. I don't think I've ever had the server actually be down or anything like that, at least for the Twitch servers. And for the stream key, depending on what streaming service you're using, it'll be somewhere in the settings. I'll show you guys how to get the Twitch stream key, actually, because I actually know how to get that one because I stream on Twitch. But they're usually pretty easy to find. So in Twitch, I think it's just in here. Just go on to channel. Here's your stream key. You just copy the stream key. Do not show the stream key to anyone, because if anyone gets your stream key, they can literally just stream to your channel. So unless that's what you want and you're doing some scuff stream, which you do not want that, do not leak the stream key. If you do leak the stream key, you can reset the stream key and get another one. So yeah, do not show anyone the stream key. That is a big rule of streaming, because someone will stream porn to your account and you will get banned. So just put the stream key in there and this should be good to go, basically. For the output, this is where stuff starts getting a bit interesting. With the audio tracks, basically Twitch has, we'll take a look at them in a second, but basically what these are is that you can assign different audio. So down here, see how we have the microphone audio, this is my desktop audio, this doesn't do anything at the moment, this cable one. You can assign these audios to different audio tracks. What you can do is you can have audio going through another audio track that will go into the recording. So if you want to record and stream at the same time, a cool thing you can do is you can have, so for example, your microphone audio go through two different audio tracks. One goes to your stream, one goes to your video that you're recording, and then that way you could maybe leave out the desktop noise. So let's say you're listening to copyrighted music and you wanted to edit a video, you just needed your voice, you didn't need the desktop audio, then you could set recording to audio track 2, streaming to audio track 1, and then later on I'll show you guys how to split the audio into different tracks. It's very easy, it's not very difficult. So for the encoder here, this is going to be determined by how good your CPU is and how good your GPU is. So if you have a really good CPU and an average GPU, then have it on the X264. So the X264 is going to be your CPU basically doing the processing, and the NVIDIA NVENC, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, that is, if you even have this option here. I think there might be a separate one for AMD or something, I'm not too sure, but if you have another option here that's your graphics card, so obviously NVIDIA NVENC is the NVIDIA graphics card that I have, basically this means that it will use the graphics card to process instead of the CPU. So I have it on the CPU at the moment. But if you have, with my old setup, I used to have a really bad CPU, and I had this graphics card that I have now, like a pretty decent graphics card. So it was way better to use the NVIDIA NVENC, and it basically just, instead of my CPU just getting absolutely hammered by OBS, it just frees it up and the graphics card does most of it. So this is going to be obviously depending on your setup and how good your CPU and how good your GPU is. If your CPU is fucking always at 100% getting smashed, probably try and use the graphics card if you have a good graphics card, obviously. If you have a bad graphics card and a bad CPU, I mean, you're just going to have to experiment with what works better. Just, it's important to know that one is your graphics card and one is your CPU, basically. For the rescale output, it's going to be better if you don't change this, because this is going to take up some processing, I believe, if you have it changing the output and before it sends it to stream. So if you can, which you probably can, don't have the rescale output option, unless you want to obviously stream at a certain resolution and maybe record a different resolution or something like that. I don't even know if that's how it works, actually. Probably just leave this as is. If I ever want to rescale my output, I usually just do it in the video section here, which we'll be getting to in a second. So for the settings here, for rate control, just keep CBR. If you have this pick, there's some slightly different options. So I'll just give you guys a quick look at what my setup looks like. Still CBR. Yeah, just keep most of these as default. There's probably more in-depth guides about what each of these specific things do. But for the most part, I think CBR seems to work fine. Now for bitrate, you're going to have to select a bitrate based on your upload speed and based on There's a few pros and cons of having higher and low bitrate. You should try and get your bitrate first. So I have this website here is not too bad. You can check your upload speed, which take a look here. Test my upload speed, testmy.net. So we can take a look here. It does some tests, and then based on your upload speed, you basically, firstly, so you can see right now my upload speed is really bad, 2.4 megabits. And I have a bunch of different people using the internet and whatnot, so it's very inconsistent. So that's why my bitrate's very low. I have 2000 bitrate, and that seems to, I could stream at that fine without it buffering or doing anything like that. While you're streaming, there's a little indicator down here. So it's usually like a little box that's like different colors. If it's green, it means it's going like, green's okay. Yellow is it's a little bit of a warning, but it's still working fine. And then red is it's all gone to shit. So, and there's also shows you dropped frames as well, which is good. But basically, if everything's going into the red zone, just reduce your bitrate. Another thing to notice is that if for Twitch, for example, or if you're not an affiliate on Twitch, you won't have quality settings. Which what quality settings means is that people watching your stream can manually adjust the quality. And if you don't have quality settings and you stream at a really high bitrate, then that means that people with bad internet are not going to be able to watch, because they're only going to be able to watch at the default bitrate that you're streaming at, and Twitch isn't going to split it into multiple different quality settings. So be aware of that. If you don't have the option for quality settings, it's preferable to stream on a low bitrate if you want people with worse internet to be able to watch. The other thing is that the actual content of your stream, so for example, if you're playing a game, like let's say you're playing chess, streaming that at a low bitrate, there's not a lot of motion on the screen, so it will look a lot better than if you're streaming, let's say, if I was streaming an FPS game at 2000 bitrate, it's going to be very obvious that I'm streaming at a low bitrate. So depending on the types of games you play, if you play like slow-paced strategy game where there's not a lot of motion on the screen, a lower bitrate is going to look fine, but obviously if you're playing an FPS game or a very visual-intensive kind of lots of motion game, then a higher bitrate is going to look a lot, you're going to need a higher bitrate for it to look a lot better. So generally for the bitrate, like you can stream at like 1000, 1500 bitrate lowest, and it still looks okay depending on what you're doing. And then at the higher end, you probably don't want to go above like 6000 bitrate. If you're at 6000 bitrate, your stream's going to look very clean no matter what you're doing. So about that is probably the peak for what you want to go. There's no reason to go up to 10,000 bitrate. Some of the platforms only support a certain bitrate as well, so depending on what platform you're streaming to, I think it will warn you generally. So if you try to stream to Facebook, I think it has like 5,000 bitrate peak or something like that. I could be wrong, but yeah, just depending on your upload speed. You don't want to use all of your upload speed either. If you have 5 megabits upload, you don't want to be streaming at 5,000 kilobits, because that's going to use all of your internet, and the internet's not going to be stable as well. It's going to be going up and down the upload speed, and so you want to lowball your uploads. It's better to have a worse quality stream than have a stream that buffers and lags, is what I'm trying to say. For this stuff, just leave this as is. I put my CPU use on very fast. So the higher it is, the less CPU use. Placebo. I just realized I have one called placebo. Very fast seems to work fine. It depends on your CPU, and if you're having, there's a lot of settings on OBS that if, let's say, your CPU's like going fucking ham, overdrive, you might want to tweak some of the settings, maybe experiment a little bit and see what effects it has. And yeah, it's about balancing like how good you can get your setup to how how good the stream looks, right? So it's how much your setup can handle and how much the stream looks. And depending on games as well, so if you play games, if you're playing very intensive games, you don't have to be constantly changing your stream settings. So generally it's better to lowball something that's good, but something that's comfortable, right? Because it's really annoying when you play a game that's like super high intensity and then you have to like edit shit, right? For the recording, you can just choose a path that you want to record to. For the audio tracks, so I recommend having audio track 1 for streaming, audio track 2 for recording. That's a pretty decent way of doing it. You can have this, if you want the recording to just record the stream audio, you can put this on audio track 1. You can also make it record multiple audio layers like this, and then later on you'll be able to, so let's say I send my microphone audio through track 3 and my desktop audio through track 2, then, so let's say I did this, I did 2 and 3, and so let's say I sent both of them to 1, where my stream audio is, and then I sent 2 and 3, basically through my recording. Then when I've recorded audio, when I drag this into my editing software, the video I get, the audio layers are split, so I'll be able to change the volumes of them independently, and I'll be able to delete one if I want, stuff like that. So this is very good for editing videos, stuff like that. I might make a tutorial later on how to split specific audios, like you can split game audio from music audio, which if you're going to be uploading stuff to YouTube and you don't want the copyrighted music you're playing on your stream, for example, that can be very useful. So I might make a tutorial in the future. If you guys want that, leave a comment. Anyways, and subscribe, obviously. We're trying to get 10k subs, boys, but at some point, maybe the end of the year, don't know. 10k sub dream, boys, it's gonna happen. Anyways, just for audio recording, just use Stream Encoder. It's just going to reduce the amount of bandwidth you're going to stream. Obviously, if you do this, then the bitrate of your recording is going to be the same as your bitrate of your stream, which if the bitrate of your stream is very low, like this, 2000 kilobits per second, then you're going to need a 2000 kilobit per second recording, right? So you can use a different encoder, I believe, and then you can get a separate bitrate for your recording. I personally don't do this. It's going to be more, obviously, it's basically like recording twice at once, so it's going to be much more intensive. But you can do it. It will work. And if you have a good computer, you can probably do it pretty easily. But I just use the stream encoder. I'm not too fussy. Usually I don't even use this. Usually I just download my Twitch VODs and make them into videos. I don't usually record and stream at the same time. But if you do, and you want to have a high quality video, but your stream is low bitrate, then you can easily do that. Also here is also the recording path is just where you want the videos to go, the video footage that you record to go. As for audio, just keep this old default. I haven't messed with any of this stuff. I think this replay buffer is from a plugin I have on my OBS. I don't think you guys will have this, so don't worry about it. As for audio, just keep everything basically the same. Keep stereo audio. This is a good sample rate. Pick the devices that you want for your audio down here. You can change them by clicking these cogwheels independently. So for example, if your microphone it's picking up the wrong microphone, you click this little cog down here. I'll just show you real quick. You can click this cog, you can go properties, and you can select a different microphone. So do it down there. It's a bit more clunky to obviously do it in here, but you can, if you want, you can choose your devices here. Just keep all of this. Basically, this is all just default, I believe. You can set up hotkeys to enable audio and stuff, but if you want to do that, you can do that. It's your choice. As for the video settings, go to the base canvas resolution is the actual resolution of your OBS. So I got a second OBS window here that I'm recording on. So the pixel ratio of this actual window is the base canvas resolution. So generally you would want this to just be the same as your desktop background. So you want this to be, so I have a 19 by 1080. I mean, I only have 2 choices here. I usually don't have a lot of choices. If you're streaming on, so for example, on my laptop, it's like 1300 pixels, so I can't choose 1920 by 1080. So you got to keep that in mind. But for most of you guys, just have 1920 by 1080 because that's the default monitor size. If you have a bigger monitor, you can have a bigger canvas size. But that being said, I don't even know if you can stream to a larger resolution than 1080p on Twitch, or maybe on some platforms you can. I'm not entirely sure, but just put this to your monitor size. That way, it's 1 pixel to 1 pixel on your screen on this OBS window here. As for the output scale resolution, this is what you want the stream resolution to be. So if you want to have a 720p stream, then you would put this to 1280 by 720. If you want a 1080p stream, you put it to this. Now, this doesn't affect the quality as much as people think it does. It does, but generally speaking, from my experience, it's better to have this on a higher number than a lower number. A lot of people have really shitty stream setups. They'll put the quality on like 480p, and they'll have shitty bitrate 480p. In my opinion, shitty bitrate 720p looks better than 480p with shitty bitrate. That's just my experience because I've tested it a bunch. So I'd recommend at least doing 720p. Even if you have a shitty setup, go to 1280 by 720p. And if you have a better stream quality, you can go 1080p. But do note that the actual quality of the stream is more so going to be determined by the bitrate. But if you have a really high bitrate and you have a really low resolution, it's going to look pretty shit as well. So generally over highball the scaled resolution. I also think that I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure if you have 1920 by 1080, if you have the same output resolution as the canvas resolution, it doesn't have to scale it. So I think it's actually better on your processing, or it's better on your CPU, I mean, to have it the same resolution. As for the downscale filter, if you have the same resolution, I don't think the downscale filter matters. This only matters if you're using different resolutions. So I'm using the same resolution, doesn't really matter. But again, it's another setting that depends on your CPU and depends on how much processing power you have to experiment. If you want to, like, if you're really trying to edge the CPU usage and whatnot, then you're gonna have to experiment with this. You can see here, fastest but blurry, which means so bilinear is going to use the least amount of CPU. This one's going to use the most amount of CPU. Usually I'm using bicubic. I don't know if that's the default one. Seems to look fine. I've streamed in 720 before. Bicubic seems to work fine. For the FPS value, here's another thing that's really interesting, is that the FPS value, I'd recommend just using 30 or 60. I mean, they're the general FPSs that people use and people are used to. You don't want to be streaming at 10 FPS. I don't know why that's even an option. But basically the FPS value is another thing where people think it's going to greatly determine how good the stream looks, but it actually doesn't have as big of effect as people think. Like if you're streaming in 30 FPS and you're streaming in 60 FPS, people are thinking that that's going to be like half the quality because there's twice the frames, right? But that's not actually how it works. And I've experimented with both of them. Even at low bit rate, you can still stream at 60 FPS and it'll look pretty decent from my experience. So if you want to stream at 60 FPS, the better determiner of whether or not to stream at 60 FPS or 30 FPS is going to be the FPS of the stuff on screen. So for example, if you're playing any game is basically going to look better at 60 FPS unless you're playing chess or something that doesn't have FPS basically. And it's also going to be determined by your webcam FPS as well. That's another thing you can take into account. So for example, if you have a 60 FPS webcam, then it's going to look a lot better if you have 60 FPS on your output, right? Because you're not making the most of your 60 FPS webcam otherwise, right? But I only have a 30 FPS webcam, so it doesn't make a difference, obviously, if I have 30 or 60 FPS in terms of what you're seeing in the webcam portion of the screen right now. I stream at 60 FPS because I like 60 FPS, right? And it's fancy. As for hotkeys, this stuff is basically all preference. You just click one of these boxes and then basically press a key. So if you have I recommend using your number pad. If you have a number pad on the edge of your keyboard that's not doing anything, you can use that for some stream hotkeys. So you can see here, the best ones, the most useful ones usually just switch to scene. So you have a bunch of scenes, you can be like, I want this one to switch to this scene, this keypad key to switch to this scene. You can really customize the shit out of this if you want with very individual things, but generally just making different scenes and having hotkeys to switch to scenes is going to be the easiest way to really navigate your stream, I guess. Most of this other stuff where you hide PNGs and stuff, you're probably not going to be using. Going in the advanced settings, we can see the process priority LEDs. This I'd recommend to put on high. So what this does is basically if your CPU is doing multiple different things, like let's say you're playing a game and you also have OBS running, it's basically if shit's gonna lag, the process priority is going to determine like what's going to lag first, essentially, right? So you might have so if you start playing a game that has very high CPU usage and your CPU is fucking banging, right? Then if this is high, it means that the game will lag instead of the stream, right? And I've what this usually looks like, if you guys ever have like a really stuttery, shaky stream, maybe everything on your side looks fine. You're playing the game fine, everything looks fine, but then the stream is like really like stuttery and really bad FPS and looks awful. That's probably because of this setting here, because I've had that problem before. And I'd recommend putting this on high. You can also in the control panel manually set OBS to high processing priority. I don't know if that does anything different, but I think this, just changing this setting seems to work fine. As for the video, just keep this on the default settings, all of this stuff. I mean, there's only one option here, Direct 3D 11's what I've got. This stuff all works fine, so just keep this on whatever it's on, lads. Don't fuck with the color settings unless you know what you're doing. For recording, this is basically how you want the files to be saved. So you can see hovering over it tells you what each of the things are. You can customize this how you want. So you could have, you know, if you don't want it to show the time that it recorded, you just want it to have a name, or generally I just keep this as default. You also have overwrite. So for example, if you just change this to not have the dynamic elements of the naming, which is what these percent symbols is, you can make it so like, if I restart my stream, it'll just record over the other stream, essentially. I'll just delete the other file before it starts recording. Automatically remuxed. Oh, okay, so there's a thing called remuxing. I didn't cover this, but in the recording output, you can choose different recording formats. So the advantage of FLV, I've only ever used FLV and MP4, but the advantage of FLV is that if the stream crashes, the recording gets saved. It just cuts the recording there. Whereas with MP4, which is what I usually want my files to actually look like, it says here, look, will not be unrecoverable if the file cannot be finalized. So exactly. So if you have a power outage, as it says here, something like that, then if you're recording an MP4, you'll lose all of it. But if you're recording in FLV, I'm not sure about these other ones. I haven't used these, but FLV, if you're recording in it, you have a power outage, it will just cut the, it will cut the recording and the recording will be fine. So, and then basically if you did record in a FLV, then there's a thing called remuxing, which basically converts, you can convert that FLV file into a MP4 file or into whatever file you want. So you can see here there's the remux recordings option, and that's also very useful if you want to stream in FLV. I just stream in MP4 because, or I just record, in MP4 because YOLO, if I lose the footage, I lose the footage. But it is what it is. If you want to have it secure, you can stream in FLV and then you can remux the recordings. So there's a setting down here, automatically remux to MP4. So once you finish the stream, it'll automatically initialize a remux and it'll convert the file. I don't know if it creates a new file or converts the file, but you'll get an MP4 recording in the end. Just keep this as is. Stream delay. So stream delay is basically, if you want to add 10 seconds onto your stream, let's say you're playing a game and you don't want people looking at your stream, looking at the minimap if they're on the enemy team, stuff like that. You can enable stream delay, however long you want. It uses RAM, so the higher you have this number, the more RAM it uses, but that being said, it doesn't use very much. It doesn't actually use that much. So you can see 60 seconds uses 16 megabytes, which isn't a whole lot. So this is generally, you can go pretty high with the stream delay before you're probably going to run into any problems. Most of the time, you're not going to want stream delay because obviously, if you want to interact with your chat, the faster you can do it, the better. Also, if you're using Twitch, I'll show you guys this as well. If you're using Twitch, there's another setting where latency mode, low latency. If you do have the option to turn your Twitch stream on low latency mode, it's going to be very useful. It's going to change. So normal latency is about a 10-second delay, and low latency is about a 3 or 4 second delay. So this is really, really good if you want to have, as it says here, real-time interactions with your viewers. 3 or 4 second delay on low latency. Definitely turn this on. But if you do have, I think normal latency might be slightly better if you do have issues where your stuff drops out and whatnot. But if you can, obviously put on low latency, it's much better for streaming. You have automatically reconnect, so if the stream drops out, it automatically reconnects. I don't have this on. Again, it's your preference, what you want to do. Network, just keep this as default. Just keep all this basically as default. Browser source hardware acceleration is going to obviously use more processing power if you have this enabled, but it's obviously going to make any browser sources look a lot better and they're not going to lag, so have this on. I'm not sure what this hotkey thing does, but just leave it. Just leave it, honestly. Now, if we go into the audio properties, advanced audio properties, not audio properties, this is where there's a few more settings you might want to change. So so we have the tracks over here, which is what I was talking about before. So any of the these audios that are going through track 1 will go through the stream, and any of them that go through track 2, if that's what you've got set up here, will go through the recording. So right here, I generally have track 2 for recording, track 1 for audio. If you want to split the audio, you can do that. I don't really care about trying to have different audio tracks and then I can edit them later. If you do, obviously, then you can have the multiple audio layers for the recording. But I just have track 1 for... So for here, if I wanted to just record my voice on the recording, I just wanted my microphone audio, I could go track 2 is just the microphone, and track 1 has the microphone plus the desktop audio. So that means microphone and desktop audio goes to stream, just my microphone goes on the recording that I do. Also, there's a sync offset. So basically what this is your microphone, a lot of the time it's not going to be in time with your video. And this is something that you probably want to change. I can't really go in depth. I might make another tutorial on how to do this. But basically, you might find that when you're talking, your audio and your video don't set up. And the sync offset, you're basically going to be able to add a slight delay to your audio and set that up. There's also ways to add delay to video as well in the properties. There's a filter, I think it's like render delay. And so you can add a slight delay to video if you want everything to line up properly. This is something that happens a decent amount where you'll see someone stream and let's say their audio is just out of time with the video. And so you would want to sync offset is one of the ways you can do that, right? That's a bit more complicated, so I won't be able to cover it in this video, but I will cover that in a future video. Another really nice thing that I should have mentioned earlier is that you have a thing called profiles, which basically save your settings. So all of those settings that we just went through then, they're saved in the current profile that we're using. So by default, there's one called Untitled. And so you can rename that to whatever, rename it to Dick's Guide or whatever you want to call it. I've got Settings Guide, but I spelled settings wrong for this one. And then basically you can set up you can create new profiles or you can duplicate profiles. So let's say you want to have one of these profiles set up to stream to one platform, one of them set up to stream to another platform, one of them for recording, maybe you want to have different recording settings, right? So that's what I usually do. I have one for Twitch, and then I have one for recording YouTube videos, which is just has higher quality settings. And so yeah, you can basically easily switch between different OBS settings using these. So make sure the settings we just did should be saved on whichever one you're on. Just rename it to whatever you want, and if you want to try some new settings, you can duplicate it and then edit the settings, and if things go bad, you can always go back to the old profile that you're using. The other thing here is scene collection, where basically all these scenes and stuff, it's basically profiles but for scenes. So all this stuff, these profiles are just for settings, and then the scene collection is for the scenes and the sources, I believe. So if you want to create a new scene collection here, okay, well, call it high, you can see that this scene collection doesn't have any scenes, doesn't have any sources, right? That can be very useful as well if you have different, you maybe want to set up for different types of streams, or if you want streams on different platforms, or your recordings to have different stuff, basically. I should be using that. I haven't been. I've just have a shit ton of different scenes. But yeah, that's always a feature there if you guys want to use it. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is studio mode. Now, studio mode is basically splits into two different windows here, and what you have is you have what you're actually streaming, and then you have another window which you can edit, and they basically can't, the people watching your stream or watching your video, this is what they see, and you can change another scene without them being able to see it. So you don't have to be on the scene to change it. So what I could do is, let's say I have this 1v1 tournament rules. I'm going to show them in a second. I'm like, oh shit, all right, let's take a look at it. Okay, so let's say I want to just get rid of this altogether, the rules, and I just want to show the sunset that's behind it for some reason. Then I can do that, and I go, okay, I don't want to show the rules, I just want to show the sunset. I go transition, and now this is what the people watching the stream can see, and I can go change another scene, I can do whatever I want. So the studio mode is very, very useful. It's a bit more complicated, obviously, but it works pretty well, and if you want to edit scenes without people being able to see while you're streaming, then that is the way to do it. That's it for the video on your OBS settings. If you guys liked the video, make sure to drop a like. And if you want to watch more of my videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button, lads. Also, leave a comment down below for what other tutorials you want. I want to do some like visual effect type tutorials. I think would be really good because I don't think there's too many really good ones. Like I did a dancing effect tutorial that went pretty well, I believe. So more stuff like that you'll probably expect in the future if you subscribe, lads. If you guys want more of this stuff, just let us know, basically. And thanks for watching the video.